Welcome back to the Aussie Shed, gentlemen, for part 3 of the right-hand drive twin turbo build of my Nissan 370 GT. As you can see, I'm balls deep into the driver's side exhaust manifold. I'm currently working on this runner here, and I've just been going at this piece on the top here, bit of a sort of a teardrop shape that blends this pipe into here. So I'm just about to tack that onto the runner and then disconnect it from the flange plate and start just doing the final fitment of it. It's pretty bloody good. I will then do the hole in through the side here and try and match it as perfectly as I can with a die grinder. And then once that guy's done, I'll then move back onto this runner here, this rear runner. I want to slightly modify the position of this. It was a bit of a rough thing anyway, just to get me that fixed position of the turbine entry, so I knew I could go back no more kind of thing. It was just basically a stopgap so that I didn't move the turbine into a position that I couldn't deal with later. So now that that's all kind of sorted, and I have this main runner in and the secondary runner there, it now leaves me in a position where I can see exactly what room I have for this runner. This is probably the trickiest. There are clearance issues in 3 points with this. First, we have the turbine hitting on it about here, or very close to hitting on it. We also have the stud that goes into the manifold right down in here that I have to leave room for to be able to get the nut on and everything. And then I have the gap between the main runner and the flange plate that I have to somehow get through and then twist it back over in a similar fashion that this one has been done. I'll have to twist it back up through the back. So basically I'm just going to try and bring it in, whether it goes into this recess in here or over here. There's actually no, in this stud hole here, there is no stud there. The locations are here on the center port and down here. It doesn't matter if I completely obscure that. That's why it hasn't bothered me down in this position here to block this one up, because there's no stud in there. So this one here has to at some point come back out and then wrap around and then go back into there to direct the gas flow in the proper direction, so that it's actually firing down into the exhaust housing, which, you know, that's the whole kind of idea. In a situation like this where there is absolutely no room for packaging, things like equal runner length don't even come into it. The minimal gains that you can achieve with equal runner length in a turbo system are really not worth me even considering in this, due to the massive packaging issue. Log style manifolds work really, really well as long as you follow certain principles with them, and this should be absolutely fine. There should be no problems with this. This isn't an all-out power build. I'm not shooting for the absolute maximum numbers that I can try and achieve. The motor is stock. I won't be building the motor. At this point, it's just about getting the packaging right and getting the manifold done in such a way that it doesn't become problematic later. There are no issues with clearances in particular. Like I say, this second runner here isn't too bad. So what I might do is just weld this kind of teardrop shape on and then disconnect it from the flange plate and then do a little bit more fine tuning and then look at making the penetration through into the main runner. So the material that I'm using to build this manifold, it's Schedule 10 304 stainless steel. What I've done here is I've started with 1.25" pipe out of the ports. 1.25" gives you a really good match for the port size on the heads, and it also gives you plenty of room to get your nuts and studs. Once you've welded around the base of the runner, you still actually have room for the nuts to go on. Whereas if you go to 1.5" straight out of the head ports, it impedes too much on the studs and nuts around them. So what I've done here is I've come out with 1.25", and you can see this piece here is a step, and this steps up into 1.5". So you've got 1.25" and 1.5". So once again, all the base at the start of all the runners are 1.25", and then when that goes up into there, it'll be going into the 1.5" section. So the gas starts to expand as it moves further away from the head port. And then up here, so you then have 1.5", and now you have 2" up this end. So then there is another, so then you have another reducer expander here in this position, which goes from 1.5" to 2" Reason being that the 2-inch works really well with the V-band on the exhaust housing. So we've gone from 2-inch, 1.5 inch, 1.25 inch. It smooths out the transitions as best as I kind of could, really. Yeah, obviously, ideally, if you were casting this manifold, you would make this transition here a lot smoother. Being that it's made from welded elbow pieces, it'll still be absolutely fine. There's absolutely no issues with that. But as you can see, everything's really starting to kind of twist and turn around, which is what you have to be prepared to do when you're building manifolds in tight situations like this. It's going to look even more twisty turny when this one comes through the back and twists back up around and comes back over the top. But it'll be absolutely fine. It's quite a lot of work. There's a hell of a lot of man hours involved in doing this kind of thing, which is why any custom like this is ridiculously expensive to get done, and why anyone who's producing turbo kits generally will finish their prototype and then they will use that to get a casting made, so they can then produce cast manifolds, which is obviously a massive reduction in production costs. But obviously, if you're doing a one-off or just building a few of them, you know, that's not something that you can do, depending on the complexity of it and everything as well, and really what people want. Often people like to see handmade manifolds, they don't like to see cast manifolds. Generally, more of your log style manifolds end up being sort of a cast thing, whereas stuff with big long windy runners, it's a lot harder to make castings from them, so people generally tend to just continue just to make them out of welded bends. But yeah, so that's how it's going. So at this stage, what I'm going to do is just tack this on, grind through the welds on the flange down the bottom, and do a little bit more fiddling with this. And once I've got it 100% right, I'll then cut out the hole in behind it and blend it into this first runner. There we go. You can see that's a tight little bugger. What's the work in something like that? Anyway, trying to do a little bit more tuning up on it. Rightio, so I've just spent a few hours tuning this piece here up so that I have now a perfect fit, which if you look here, you'll see she's looking real sweet. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start marking out for the hole to go through into the main runner. So this is the technique that I use. I'm not sure what other people do, but I'm just going to mark this whole area here with a Sharpie, big fat fella. Now position the piece in the optimum position that you want it to be in, and then mark around it with a scriber. This way you'll be able to see where your marks are. It's very hard getting a really fine, accurate mark on steel like this that you can quite easily see. So you can see here, mark off there. That's given me, probably a bit hard to see on camera, but that's given me my outline. Now I'm just going to come in. I'll come in a couple of mil at the start, a little bit more where the pipe's wider, where it's flattened right out on the front there. Mark the inside position of the hole, roughly, because what I'll do is I'll do quite a bit of this with the with a hole saw out as much as I can, and then I will finish it off with the die grinder. And what I probably will also do is cut through the tacks on this joint here, so that I've got access through underneath when it's fitted, so I can get my fingers up in there and just make sure that I've got all the edges right, so there's no restriction anywhere. It just allows me to get it spot on. Otherwise you're working in a bit of a blind area. You can get it very close, but you can get it absolutely perfect if you get your fingers in there. So that's where I'm at now, folks. I'll get a hole saw or a couple of hole saws. I'll just remove as much of this material as I can, and then I'll finish it off with the die grinder. But what I'll possibly do is get that hole to a rough stage and just tack the runner back on, and then I'll move on to this. The problem is with all these different shapes and everything is when this thing is fully welded out, it's going to move, and it really buggers you up when you've got intricate pieces like this that you might have to redo bits. So ideally I want to get a lot of it done, a lot of it welded out before I make the absolute final positioning of everything, and I don't want to do that until I get both manifolds to a stage of being pretty much like 95% complete. I'll then look at starting to pull off runners and weld them individually, and then weld out the whole thing, and then finish a few final pieces to allow adjustment for things moving around from the heat when it's had the final weld. So yeah, like I say, I'll probably just rough that out, get it mostly cut out, have a bit of a hit with the die grinder, but just to be certain that I don't end up backing myself into a corner with this before I get that next runner done. And like I say, I'll then weld a whole heap of it out, but I won't do that until I get the passenger side manifold up to the same stage. So bear with me, folks. I'll get this knocked out and I'll show you what it looks like. Alright gentlemen, I've done it. That's looking pretty good now. That's me cut through. That's just sort of the rough first cut through. It's not that rough. It's pretty close actually. But I'll take it no further until I get more of the manifold finalised, just so I don't end up with a gap somewhere that I'm going to regret. So what I'll do now is I'll re-tack this runner on, and that way it's all held back nice and firmly in position, and I can move on to this guy over here and redo this one so it's in a little bit more of a nicer position. I'll remount the turbo and I'll have a little bit of a think about this one. Always good to have as many references in position when you're doing things like this. I may even put a stud that I pulled out of the head, I may even mount the stud into this position in behind here, which is this sort of problem area here where I can't kind of tilt this up at all. I'll put the stud and a nut on that just so that I know I can't go any further than a particular spot in that area, and then I'll do a bit of fiddling with this one here. But that's pretty good. Pretty happy with that. If I blow compressed air just with my bench air blower through this port, it creates a vacuum down on this first runner, which is what you want. You obviously don't want to be blowing into that and it blows out of this one before it blows out of this one. It's not actually blowing out here at all. It's creating a vacuum as it goes in, so it's coming through, hitting, swirling up and around this corner and coming out of here, which is bloody fantastic. So righto, I'll get this tacked up and then I'll move on to this runner here. Alrighty, that should do it. Yep. So if she was upside down, you'd be looking something like that, which doesn't look that far off a sort of a conventional header. But we're in this position here, and she looks a bit weird, but it's all good. I think I'll just remount this onto the engine, remount the turbo, just double check, make sure I haven't fucked anything up here. The compressor housing does sit very close, the snout of the compressor housing sits very close to here, so I'll just make sure I haven't buggered anything up there, and we'll be back onto that other runner. So that's the manifold just quickly thrown back on. There's probably no real reason to do this, but I like to err on the side of caution, folks. When there's so much work in doing something like this, it really is the wisest way to approach things. because you don't always get everything right. Even just simply fitting a turbo for a test fit, folks, isn't that easy. That seems pretty good. I won't bother dropping the body back down, but at this stage, that's pretty good. I've got enough room here that it won't bother when I get a silicone joiner on here and then a clamp. It's not going to be, because this will tend to radiate a bit of heat. Further away I can keep it from anything like that, the better. So that's good. That's the most clearance I could hope to achieve there. So we're looking pretty bloody good, ladies and gentlemen. We are looking pretty bloody sweet. All right, I'll just take a few measurements for that third runner that I'm working on, and then I'll get this back off. I'm quite a few more hours into this now, folks, than I was on the last take. I'll just run through a few things that I've done here. I have remade this section here of this first runner. It was never really intended to be sort of permanent, being it was one of the first things that was put in place. That's why it looked pretty shit, because I just kind of threw it together. And being that it's the tightest runner, I've been doing everything that I can to try and open it up a little bit and just promote a little bit better gas flow. So there are a few modifications I've made. I've actually recut this first section here just above the V-band and adjusted these angles just a little bit here and there in two places. And like I say, I've completely redone all of this section here just to try and promote a little bit better clearance wherever I've been able to. The more of anything like this that you get pieced together, the more you realise where the issues are, but also the more you realise where you do have a little bit of space. So I had space in a couple of areas that I wasn't really super aware of when I started, so I've been able to just push this runner into them a little bit better, and yeah, it's worked out really well. I wasn't happy with this initially, but I kind of knew this is what was going to happen. Like, you know, once everything else was in, I would then revise this and try and use up every little bit of space that I could. So when you're doing things like this, like, it takes an unbelievable amount of time when you're doing these final pieces to just sculpt where you're sort of cutting into anything. And I'll just sort of give you guys a bit of a tip here. So what you can do, this is just a piece of PVC plumbing pipe. I've just got a length of it here. Now, it's the same size as 1.25 inch stainless steam pipe. So it's a good thing to use to dummy fit when you're trying to make stuff up, because it's a lot easier to carve up bits of PVC pipe and get fairly close than it is to try and work a piece of steam pipe to get to a point where it's even close, because you will generally not get something like this with the first go. You'll generally fuck it up at least once, if not twice, and waste material. But if you're doing it with PVC pipe, it doesn't matter. It's fairly quick and easy to knock up a new one. And once you've gotten a really good fit up out of your PVC pipe, you can then kind of just transfer everything onto the steam pipe. What you can do is you can actually expand it over a piece of pipe, like so. This is a reducer, so it's not really going on all the way, but you get what I mean. You can expand it over a piece of pipe, mark around it, just give yourself a little bit of clearance, and basically you start from being 3/4 of the way there from having something like this. I guarantee it will save you so much time, because there is so much time in doing all this sort of stuff. If you've ever built exhaust manifolds and things before, you will never ever complain again about the cost of getting someone to build this kind of stuff for you, because the amount of hours that goes into this is absolutely phenomenal. And a lot of people generally find it really hard to justify why they're paying so much for custom performance parts like this for their vehicle. But believe me, the hours that go into it are absolutely phenomenal. So what I'm getting at is you really have to try and use anything and everything that you can at your means to try and speed the process up a bit. And I find using anything like this, you know, bits of conduit, bits of plumbing pipe, anything that you can find that's easier to work than the steam pipe will certainly push you along a bit further and cut down your hours on anything. So all I've done here is I've made this, and as you can see, it fits in there nice. Great thing. So then I've just transferred that onto a piece of steam pipe, basically just wrapped it over a piece of steam pipe and then sort of cut around it. You can see how close this is. It's sort of, you know, pretty close. Like I say, just give yourself a little bit extra, and a lot of the work in getting a component like this to this point is all the initial cutting as you're moving it up into position. If you can, like I say, trust me, anything like this that you can do, any ideas you can come up with to save time, mate, it's always a win. So we've just replaced that, use that as a template to make another piece, which as you can see, we've now got that piece in there. So that's basically that third runner there. It's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. It all fits up really well. All the angles and everything are all pretty good. I think the gas flow will be pretty good. There shouldn't be any issues with reversion. It's always hard with log manifolds, and look, honestly, log manifolds work pretty good even if you just come in at 90 degrees, which you'll see a lot of your factory turbo manifolds, they don't really give too much of a crap about the angle of the pipes entering the main part of the log, but it always is better if you can at least get a bit of an angle on there just to shoot it towards the turbo. So where I'm at with this now is I'm just going to mark around it and then cut the hole through into the main runner there. Cut in through here, and once that's done and it's all pretty sweet, I'll then just tack this piece on. Probably just put a couple of tacks around it and then mount the turbo on, double check it all. Like I say, I have been doing quite a bit of fiddling with this, with the clearances, and I'll probably do a little bit more, who knows. But when it comes time to weld out the manifolds, which I'm going to get the other manifold up to this stage as well before I look at welding it out, because I've got to kind of change my setup, get rid of the button off my torch, put my foot pedal on the TIG setup, and, you know, set up my bloody twin regulators and all that kind of crap. So it's always good to do everything in big batches when you can. So what I will do is I will pull these apart at the first joint, or however close I can get, once they're kind of tacked in, and I'll get the die grinder in there just so that I can make the entry into the main runner here really, you know, super nice, and then I'll weld it all out. I'll back purge the whole thing, obviously, being it's stainless. So yeah, I'll just carry on with this, and I'll get this hole cut through here, and I just thought I'd show you the trick with the PVC pipe. Save you a lot of time. So I've marked around where this runner came in there, and I've obviously taken the runner off to give me a bit better access. So what I'll do now is I'll come in about 5mm all the way around, and then I'll cut the bulk of that out with a hole saw, and then from there I will clean it all up with a die grinder and whatever else I can get in there to get me to my sort of 5mm line. And then I'll tack all this back together, and like I say, at some point pull it off from the first joint so I can check the internal part of the joint for flushness and go at it with a die grinder and get it perfect before it's fully welded out. But that's the beginning of it. As you can see, it's marked. I'll come in, hole saw, die grinder, put it back together, and hopefully mount this on, mount the turbo, and this side should be kind of ready to go, and I can start working on the other side. But we'll see. Who knows what's going to happen when I get this all mounted back onto the car. So yep, I'll just do this and we'll see what happens. I'll just measure the size across my kind of maximum width. Just getting a point there for the twist drill in the center of the hole saw. I could try and mount this in the drill press, but it's just a pain in the ass. It's quicker and easier just to do it here on the bench. This is really handy, folks. It's just a woodworking, a quick release woodworking bench vise. It's just an old thing that I picked up many years ago, and I've just made some aluminium plates for it so you can hold stuff without marking it. It's way more robust than if you just had some timber on it. It's just the combination of that and then the universal vise up here. For a bench, it's just, you know, really good setup. All right, I'll set up for this. Throw a bit of cutting fluid on there. Bit of lube. Always got to have plenty of lube, gentlemen. You don't want things to get too dry when you're going at that hole, do you? There you go, we're through. I might just see what I can use to remove this section in here. You know, hole saws are always good for this sort of thing, or even just a twist drill to leave you with the least amount that you have to die grind, because die grinding sucks, folks. Drilling holes is way better. So I'll have a look at that. I'll probably just go at it with a twist drill, I reckon. We'll see. Not too bad. Oh, I got here. I got a Dremel set up with a cutter on it. Make a bit of a slice down there with a Dremel. All right. A few more lights back on in here. That's a bit better. All right. Might have a bit of a fiddle with a Dremel. Probably get a bit of a cut going there. Oh, the Dremel didn't really like doing that, did it? Hey, it just shows you. Not really meant for real work. I guess I was probably being asking a bit much of it, but what do you do? Mate, it's plugged in at the bench. If I fucked it, well, no, I don't think I fucked it. We'll be right. Just an awkward little spot down in here. Ah, shit. Ah, fuck it, the die grinder will make short work of it. Alright. Bear with me. Die grinding. Get this fucking piece out now. it gets hot. I'm going to slow that down a bit, I think. Alright, that'll probably do us for now. And there it is there, folks. For now, I think that'll just about do. It's close enough. Like I say, I'll probably get all this tacked up a little bit later on in the game. And I'll probably tack this up fairly soon, but as far as being more of a permanent sort of tacking arrangement, I'll probably get that tacked on there, take that back off, and then I'll be able to see exactly what I need to take off with the die grinder, and at least the bulk of it's done. It won't be too much of a drama to get in there and just trim it all up, then final weld it. So that's pretty good. We'll take this all back together and put the turbo back on, and if it looks pretty good, we'll move on to the other side. So I've tacked down this piece here that we were working on just before, and I've had a bit of a go at it with the die grinder. I'll grab a torch and take the camera off the tripod, see if I can give you a bit of a look in there. You can see how the transitions go, nice and smooth. Most of the way there, very, very close. And now that I've got it to that point, what I'm going to do is go at it with a flat wheel that's very close in size to the port on the end of the die grinder here, and just go in and out of this area and just clean it up to a point where it's really, really nice, and then start refitting the top of the runner. And that, oh, it's bloody hot. And that's looking really good now. Really, really nice. I'll once again temporarily refit this runner, put a few more tacks in it, and we'll look at throwing it back on the engine, fitting the turbo, and possibly moving on to the next one. Awesome. This is all re-tacked now, folks, ready to mount onto the engine. See, it's, you know, pretty reasonable. Not bad for a roughie. That's how she's going to be sitting on the engine. I think it'll be good enough, I reckon. Alright, to the engine. So between the top of the compressor cover and this port here, there's probably 0.5 millimeter. We can rotate that around though to get more, but the more I come away, the more it creates a problem down the bottom here with this power steering connector, which I'm going to have to pull out and put like a maybe 22.5 degree 45 or something on that, just to sort of tilt it down out of the way of this. I've got just 5-10 mil. It's probably 10 mil clearance between the bottom of here and the outlet of the compressor. I've got, mate, probably 2 millimeters on the back side to the engine mount, and 0.5 millimeter in there on this back port. The steering does look like it's going to clear, so I think we are pretty good. So I guess what I'm at the stage of doing now is dropping the body back down, and if when I drop the body it's all good, we'll leave it and we'll move on to the passenger side. But yes, it does fit. for all the trouble and everything, it does actually fit. You can see in there and all this kind of business. There we go, down in there, here, here. Back of the compressor in there, you can't really see, but believe me folks, there ain't no other location for this, that is it. But it does fit, and that's the whole point of the exercise. Alright, let's get the body shell down. So far our clearance up top is bloody phenomenal, ladies and gentlemen. It's all I could ask for. Our main inlet to the turbine, our sort of collector I guess you could sort of call it. It's dead center between the motor and the side of the car, where it goes down and shoots into the turbine housing. I have a good 15 millimeters between the side of the car and the pipes. The fuel lines are to the rear and well out of the way. The compressor down there, it's obscured by crap. Oh no, there it is. The compressor has clearance as well. It's sitting probably 20 mil off the side there, so I can swing the compressor out slightly if I need to. Mate, so far so good. Everything this side of the equation is looking pretty bloody fantastic. Alright, we'll go underneath and have a bit of a look. Alrighty, everything under here is looking really, really good. We have plenty of clearance for this nut. Oh god, it's hard to get your hands up in here. Oh, I can't even freaking reach it, folks. The coupling nut between the spline shaft and the steering universal there's plenty of clearance to that for that to swing and not foul on the exhaust housing or on the V-band clamp. The lower section of the universal joint is well and truly clear. Everything else, we've got no other clearance issues whatsoever. So at this stage I think we'll call that bloody done. Fantastic. Right, Jesus Christ, I've got to get out of here. Well folks, I must say I'm a very happy camper at this stage. So far, I seem to have accomplished what I set out to do. I now know for a fact that this is going to work. I always said it would, but to what degree of pain in the arse would it be as far as these clearances go? Will I be able to get everything clear enough that I'm happy with it, or is it just going to be a real pain in the arse? I even contemplated possibly having to make this manifold a couple of times if my initial positioning turned out to be just totally crap. But fortunately, as it's turned out, it seems to be fitting in there very, very good with no perceivable issues. As you'd all be aware of by now, the biggest problem has always been the clearance on this steering knuckle, but there's really absolutely no problems with that at all now. We are completely out of the way of it. So that's great, and I do have room to swing the compressor forward against the body. There's probably 20 mil of clearance here, so by swinging the compressor forward it does move this back, but it's also moving it kind of closer in this direction towards the lower steering knuckle, so I have got a little bit of room to move it, but I think it's pretty much spot on where it is. When I start welding out the manifold, if anything changes, like I say, I will probably leave this last join here before the piece that goes down onto the V-band till very last, and then I can make any minor adjustments at that joint if anything here has moved, because folks, everything moves when you start welding it up. Not a lot, but enough to give you the shits. So yeah, very happy with that. So I think I might call it here for the end of this episode. So thanks for stopping by the Aussie Shed, folks. I hope you're enjoying following this build as much as I'm enjoying doing it. Remember to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of this build and have a look at any of the other stuff that I've done. I'm always happy to respond to any comments, folks. So if you've got any questions or anything, don't be afraid to leave a comment. And of course, if you'd like to support the Aussie Shed, PayPal and Patreon links in the description. And I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.